Welcome to Collector's Corner, the premier digital art platform.
We help collectors gain and maintain their edge, all while appreciating beautiful art.
Let's jump in. Hello, friends. Today's Thursday, June 28th, 2023. Welcome to another episode of Cornering the Market. This will be out on Friday, the 30th. My name is P. You may know me online as Aston, joined by my great friend, Gerrard, who goes by Gerrard_pause online. How's it going, man?
I'm living the dream, man, as always. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go right into a big announcement.
Yeah, do it. Gerrard's got an announcement, folks. Let's hear it.
I've teased it for weeks about grinding and finally wanted to announce to everybody here that I will be launching a platform called 8nap Art as the next progression for 8nap as a brand. So super excited for this. Like really a lot of hard work going on behind the scenes. Just for everybody's reference, I won't take up too much time, but it'll be a long form generative art platform that is artist forward. And there'll be some different dynamics and other things going on that will soon be announced, but be on the lookout for a tweet today, Friday, and we'll follow up with some additional information. So follow me at Gerrard_pause, P-O-Z, and we can you'll start to see some information trickled out. So super excited, dude. This is a exciting time for me, and I appreciate you giving me the space to at least make this official announcement on Collector's Corner, man. It feels so synergistic.
Absolutely. I'm super excited for it. Gerrard has been working on this idea for months. No joke. We've been talking about it almost since we first started talking. And I'm really excited to see it play out. Congrats on the announcement. Congrats on all the work that's gone into it. Yeah, well, there will be more details here on Collector's Corner, of course, about this, but also shown on screen, this is Gerrard's Twitter handle that he mentioned, Gerrard_pause. And 8nap. So he also has a fund where he invests on people's behalf, helps them get exposure to the digital art asset class. And really quickly, house cleaning stuff. We have a Substack newsletter. Check it out. Please follow, subscribe. It does really well. And we have additional stories there on that newsletter. And as always, this episode is on YouTube by video. Check it out if you can. If you got to listen by podcast, don't worry, we'll have it there. And we usually have tweet thread summaries. Well, I'm just kidding. We'll have one this week as well. And also, I have launched a premium service for folks who are looking for investment advice, specifically looking for investment targets, such as life in West America, which I'll mention briefly, but that one has done well. Now, with all that out of the way, let's jump into the show. Gerrard, can we get a vibe check? What is the current collector vibe?
I believe it's still in that cautious optimism. We don't talk macro here too much, but I'm of the opinion, I'm now on board with Aston, that we're on the verge of some positive momentum, and I'm looking for that to carry through to the NFT space. Again, I'm not calling the bottom. There could be more below it, but it feels as though there's been a good bounce in some of the more prominent collections. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I am buying right now. I am still weething most of my buys and putting in collection bids for Tezos. So, but overall, I mean, I think you're starting to see stuff move, and you're starting to see a lot of big and bigger collectors and funds and DAOs loosen up the purse strings, which is really encouraging to me.
Yeah, absolutely. On that last point, I mentioned life in West America. Flamingo DAO bought 4 of them yesterday. Now, Flamingo DAO buys a lot of stuff, but these are some of the smartest top collectors out there. And it's sort of a question of, well, why now? Like, why are they buying at this moment? Perhaps they think that the bottom might be in. Couple that with a macro picture. Solana was supposed to get potentially really depressed in price yesterday, but the opposite happened and it rebounded. That's because a bunch of Robinhood Solana just got sold off. So the market just seems to be positive in general. And the other thing I'll say is it feels like it was just yesterday, but Gerrard, when we had that first Sotheby's auction, we saw a resurgence in prices in the gen art market. And a lot of those top collections have not really given away much of that gain. They've really been holding and have not retraced back to the pre-auction, not the goose auction, the one before that. So overall, good signs in the market. And, from a collector sentiment standpoint, it doesn't feel necessarily that different. It kind of feels like we're in a bit of a holding pattern. I think people are still waiting to see which way things shake out. It almost feels like a low volatility moment, if you will. At least that's my take.
Yeah, not a lot of volatility, but also, you know, I think you're starting to see a clear deviation between some of the more premier brands and projects, and like you said, low volatility. I think that's good for setting in a good base.
Absolutely. So what has been going on in the gen art market? Anything notable?
You know, the thing is, the volumes appear to be congruent with last week. However, there's no bigger sales outside of, like, I mean, last week had a lot of Fidenza stuff, and I think that's really encouraging too. And I'll hit on it somewhat in the Squiggle update, but I think you saw a floor, or like a ringer go off the floor, but I would consider it a floor plus ringer. No Fidenzas this week, which was interesting. And then I think what I found really intriguing this week was there was a lot of WETH action on the construction token and Genesis. So I don't know if somebody's collecting these for day zero sets or whatnot, but each had like 4 and 5 cells respectively. So really encouraging to see some of the older projects getting dusted off. And then just shout out to friend of the podcast, Node, who had an amazing WETH sale at a Memories, that hung bow that you tweeted about. So again, I go back to, there's deals out there, and if you're willing to grind and be persistent, this week, no crazy sales, but it was a lot of consistent sales, which again gives me more conviction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we saw a Meridian sale, an anti-cyclone sale. So definitely some stuff moving, which is great to see. How about on Fxhash?
So this is what's even more encouraging for me, and we'll touch on some of the news here, but what was really exciting is I really kind of was skeptical about volume dropping off after some big sales last week. But I think you saw, I mean, Obi in particular came in and bought up Contrapuntos and Dragons specifically. So you're seeing a lot of volume in that this week, largely driven by one buyer, but super encouraging, man. I mean, there's a GM that sold for 13,500 TES, and that floor seems to be slowly grinding upwards. It's pretty thin, quite honestly, after 4 or 5 sales. I mean, those are big sales for Fxhash, but there's not a lot of sellers coming in and flooring pieces. So I think you're starting to see stability in that market. Again, the RGB, a lot of sales there. There was a big, almost 3,600 sale that happened, 3,100 that happened for a super rare one. And then what's really encouraging to me is then you got a sprinkle of a new project by Tyvek. Obviously, I hold a lot of Tyvek. I'm participating in the trilogy he just released. We'll hit on it later, but man, everything in the top 15 on screen is all in the 3 or 4 digit plus 7-day volume. And it, again, looking for that consistency of people rotating in and out of different projects, but 2 back-to-back weeks of great volume on Tez and Fxhash feels good.
Yeah, and I'll point out one thing for folks who are listening closely. I'm looking at this actually for the premium, Gerrard, but certain like collections or types of grail types within collections are really getting locked up. One of my favorite here is Horizon blocks, and these are now, what is it, 5,000 Tezos? Yeah. So these have really gotten locked up here. Nice to see that. I think Fxhash has probably bottomed, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those collections later. Squiggles, what's been going on there?
So Squiggles, it's not much different from last week, but yet still oddly different, meaning there's 205 ETH of 7-day volume versus 260. The floor price is 10.36 versus 10.6, so down slightly. The sales quantity is up from 14 last week to 19. So what does that mean? I think last week we saw those, 3 bolds and the 1 pipe sale. So the volume was up. I like to see a minimum of that kind of 250 ETH in 7-day volume. And it's very encouraging. I think when you go across the sales, there's a lot of WETH sales. Last week we talked about not a lot, but this week there's a lot. But it's usually looking on screen. Some of them are floor pieces, but some of them are people who accepted WETHs for above floor. Specifically, that day zero that's on screen for 12.5, number 417. The thing that's interesting about that is after that sale, the next lowest day zero is 15.5, and there's only 7 listed. So going back to that philosophy you had about like things getting locked up, I think the narrative around day zero is here to stay, and I think that people are locking them up. The other interesting note I had, so there wasn't a lot of interesting sales, but an interesting observation I have is the fuzzies. While they seem to usually lead the price action, seem to be lagging. So they have about a 13.9 ish floor, and that's actually equivalent to the pipe, or sorry, not the pipe, excuse me, the ribbed and the slinkies. So you typically see fuzzies out in front or at higher values than those two. So it's really, really intriguing to me how people are coming in and buying up slinkies and ribbed, and I'm waiting for another run on fuzzies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome analysis here, Gerrard. And I love this slinky. Probably someone's going to buy it, but what a
Yeah, that's a
cool one.
monochrome. That's after your heart right there, man. That's a beauty.
It's I don't think it is actually. It's probably not going to be color spread 35. Yeah, it's 18 apart, so
Pretty
not
damn
quite.
close.
I'm a stickler for 14 or below, but this is a beautiful one. Great symmetry. Thanks for that analysis. That's awesome. Interesting to see what happens with squiggles, especially if we really get a rotation into generative art. We'll also see what happens with friendship bracelets. So friendship bracelets, the floor is down a bit, 0.138. It was 0.152 last week. Volume's also down 36.9 versus 79, so down more than 50%. Sales are down 181 to 375. Listings are also down 2,211 versus 2,240. So just a bit of a slower week, feels pretty consistent. I don't know, just not a lot to read into there. But there's plenty to read into on the releases that just came out. So let's dive right into them, Gerrard, because we got three and we got some news to talk about too. So first one here, really quickly, Invisibles by Ismailio. Hope I pronounced that correctly. Minted for 0.1 on Art Blocks, 200 minted. Floor is now 0.29, solid, about 3x, 15% listed. So it might come down a bit, but this one really resonated well with the crowd. And my takeaway is that if you have great art that comes out at a good price, it will do well, even though the market is still a little bit slow. And this is really fantastic art. Truly generative, done quite well. Small collection size. Happy to see it for an Art Blocks Presents and an artist that, at least by my take, is not as well known. Their first Art Blocks collection as well.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful art. Anybody who's paying attention to it saw it, and the fact that it minted out as quickly and has a resonance with the community. I'm having a civil engineering degree. It has a resonance with me. Just it looks like city building type stuff. So I think it's very beautiful, and it presents a very attractive price point. I'm curious to see how it holds up over the long term. But man, it's beautiful.
For sure. And we're going to have a bit of a theme on these next two. So the next one is Gold by Crash Blossom. So this released in, well, I don't know exactly how these collaborations work, Gerrard, but it was like with Fingerprints DAO. And as you recall, probably there was a collection called Machine, which was Mercedes-Benz Fingerprints DAO that released not too not too long ago. I think it was maybe 2 weeks prior to this one. So Fingerprints been a little bit busy here. 500 pieces, 0.32 is what the Dutch auction got down to. The floor price is now 0.69. So this has doubled in price. So yeah, this was interesting for me to see. And by the way, only 6% listed. So these are really getting locked up. It's like, okay, well, why did this one do so well when the other one didn't, even though it had the machine Mercedes-Benz branding with it, still fingerprints out. And what I think is happening, first of all, this is actually really, really interesting art. And I didn't pull up the Twitter, but this is dynamic art, and the art changes in different ways based on what's happening in the blockchain. It changes when one of the tokens sells. Really interesting the way that Crash Blossom set this up. The second thing, which is going to be consistent with the next release we talk about, is Crash Blossom has another project that's really, really well liked. And in this crowd of fully in-chain art, dynamic art that really utilizes the blockchain as a medium, this collection Burner by Crash Blossom is quite well known. Only 255 pieces there, but this artist brought a lot of clout in and brought their own community or following, is my interpretation of what happened, and part of why there's so much demand for their new release Gold. And I just wanted to show you this real quick because I was looking at this. I mean, this thing got up to a 7 Ether floor back in early January. Actually, it didn't release that long ago. So it seems like this is somewhat of a cult classic, if you will, as they might say in movies, or for movies, I should say. But yeah, I'm curious to hear if you have any thoughts on this one, Gerrard.
This one pretty much flew under my radar, honestly. I was focused on the next drop that we'll recap. I think it's beautiful art. It's obviously had a resonance with a lot of people, but I honestly have not dug into it at all.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, let's talk about the next one. I mean, World Flag by Gerrard. The floor seems to be moving every day. Released yesterday, minted at 0.329. Art Blocks Pace collab. Gerrard is the first artist to have the second collection of this collab. His first collection, which floor price has been dropping quite significantly, was still the top of the Pace collections. Perhaps not anymore, but that was kind of the gold standard with this Art Blocks Pace collab. Your thoughts on this one, Gerrard?
This is one that I was like alluded to earlier. I was tracking pretty closely. It made a lot of sense to me based on the relatability of a flag that people, despite whatever ethnicity you hop into, it or like country of origin, whether you visited or reside there, or born wherever, like there's a very relatable aspect to it. Even though that was present in his other project, it wasn't as apparent. So, and it felt like a very dynamic one. The Petro National seemed to hold up over time. It was one of the best performing Pace Art Blocks collabs. So when I saw this thing, I was prepared to spend 2 ETH on him, honestly. And then the Dutch auction just kept going down and down and down. And when it got below an ETH, I finally pulled the trigger on it. But it made a lot of sense to me, and I think it's the art may not be for everybody, quite honestly. I mean, on the surface, it's a very simple project of a flag in a desert with a flow related to its carbon emissions as a whole. But I think when you look at it, like Gerrard's I mean, I listened to so many of his spaces. Maybe that's why I'm so into the project. It's so well thought out. It's so detailed. And he's an artist that has work in very reputable museums, and I think that's when this thing got below half an ETH, I was surprised, and so I'm not surprised to see the price rebound, and I'm very happy to hold a piece, and I'm very happy for John and Pace and Art Blocks. What I would argue is a very, very successful release. I mean, you're seeing a lot of price action and people collecting around that.
Yeah, I think what this really speaks to, my take on this, is three things that are really working in the favor of this. Well, really four. First of all, it minted out quite low. This was like not a very expensive mint, relatively speaking. Secondly, John already has a collection with a much higher floor price than the mint. Now the floor prices are really similar, but that was actually quite low relative to the mint, so people could easily look at that and say, well, this probably should be worth more. Thirdly, the fact that John has, there's a network effect around this community. There's an Art Blocks / Pace community. It's a little bit different than other communities. It's different than Braindrops community, etc. So you have an audience there, and I've seen this with Bright Moments as well, some of the releases they've done. And lastly, I think, I wrote a tweet thread on this. There's a lot of personalization that comes from a country. You can look at this and feel a connection to it. And anytime you feel connection to the art, you want it more, which means there's more demand. And this is not only something you can connect with, but something that can be very personal to you for multiple reasons. And I think that's really powerful. We saw it with Soul 365 by Corey Haber. We saw it to some extent with John's first collection, Petro National. But to your point, it's a little bit harder to see the shapes of the countries, and honestly, like a lot of people, I mean, it's just harder with oil spills. So I think it just speaks to a lot of interesting dynamics that are being uncovered here in this intersection of art and collectibles. So really cool stuff. Congrats to all involved. Congrats to holders who are doing well on this one. So everyone's happy there. Some big news though, Gerrard. Gerrard broke this to me just literally before the show. Had to slot it in.
Presses. Holy cow.
Hot off the presses. Fxhash 2.0, a multi-chain feature. Fxhash is deciding to allow Ethereum and on-chain minting And layer one Ethereum, they're going to use basically they're going to continue their open platform concept, meaning there's no curation board that is required to mint on Fxhash, but now you can release an Ethereum and have people buy an Ethereum. And interestingly, this is quite a ways away, at least a few months. They're aiming for fall, winter, potentially 6 months away. So why talk about it now? I'd love to hear any and all of your thoughts, Gerrard.
I hot take coming in, I guess. I think part of it's relevance. Part of it's to bring eyes back onto Fxhash. I think part of it is to bring conviction about a future state of, I think, just a platform in general, and to I think front run some of the flexibility and agility behind Fxhash. I mean, I'm also thinking that I know there's funding going on in the background, so I think it's partly to try to bring in more revenue for the investors. So I think it's good to be a pioneer in this, and I think it's a natural progression. I also look forward to seeing how well it's embraced by both communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think, in addition, so I agree with everything you said. I also think there's a possibility. I have no knowledge of this, but there's been a bunch of Ethereum based open platforms that have released in the last couple of months, 5 of them by my count, actually. So to some extent, Fxhash's uniqueness as an open platform goes away. A lot of those platforms are in L2. So, and Ethereum is now green, just like Tezos. It's not a proof of work blockchain. So a lot of those advantages that Fxhash had going for them, open platform, green chain, lower fees to create art and to buy art, have gone away and are rapidly going to go away. So I think to some extent that might be why they announced this now prior to being ready to actually deploy this technology. I also think there's just way more revenue on the Ethereum side. And to your point, fundraising, et cetera. It's tough, I would imagine, based on the fees. And I do think at some point the royalties in Fxhash are going to have to come down. Like right now, collectors are accepting it, but folks on the ETH side don't realize it's usually 15% per secondary sale, which is much higher than, I mean, it's double than what it is on the Ethereum side. And I think as more money comes in, it would be harder for them to collect fees on the Tezos side of those size. So anyways, I actually am really excited about this. I think Fxhash has a culture and a community that is really hard for anybody to replicate. Doesn't matter what technology they have. So I think that it's going to be great moving forward. And I think that a lot of people who feel really strongly about one side or the other are going to get converted to a multi-chain world, which is where I think it should be, because the art is the art. And I think that's the more important part. So I commend them for this, and I'm glad it's happening. Really excited to see
Aston
what it
is
looks like.
vindicated for his belief on Ethereum integration. So you've been calling it for some time, man. Good job.
I have. I think it'll help everybody. So I'm excited to see it. But there'll be some road bumps, I'm sure. The other bit of news, Sotheby's is also getting into the platform game. They are creating their own launch platform, and their first collection they'll be coming out is a collaboration between Vera Molnar, who is one of the OGs. She's 99 years old, one of the OGs of generative art, and Martin Grosser. Starting price of 20 Ether, resting price of 2, regular Dutch auction, not a rebate. There you go, creating collaboration with Martin Grosser. So this will be really cool. I actually spoke with the Sotheby's folks. We'll have some special stuff for the Collector's Corner Premium community around this. I haven't even told you that yet, Gerrard. But another reputable company in the traditional art world getting into the platform game. I think that's the headline, in addition to Vera Molnar's first long form generative collection. Have any thoughts on this, Gerrard?
I do. I think what I read about is they're going to have highly curated, smaller batch releases, which is aligned with what I'm envisioning for 8nap art. So I'm looking forward to the vindication of that as a concept, but also the fact that prioritizing artists in a release platform, and being able to leverage such a big name like Sotheby's, and give artists a platform, pun intended, to have that opportunity. I think it's awesome. I think that creating great art is always a winning formula. I mean, and it was, it's kind of funny to announce that the same basically within 24 hours as Sotheby's. But other than that, I think it's really good for the space, and I'm really actually excited to see what it is, and I'm hoping that it can onboard more collectors from different spaces. I think this is overall a net positive for everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they really have a brand with the traditional art world, and I think that's great. This, along with the LACMA collaboration, are the two of the strongest ones. I think that'll really help spread Web3 art outside. And by the way, I don't think theirs is going to be as similar to yours as you're thinking. So don't worry about that. But we'll get to more of those details later when you're ready. Let's talk about great art, great prices. You want to take this one, Gerrard?
Yeah, the first one, I saw the tweet come out from Lamond. He was on Spaces with us, an amazing recording. If you haven't listened to it already, I wasn't even aware of this, but he released it looks like post photography AI collection called Railway, and for point 0.1 ETH, both Aston and I are going to probably hop off the recording and go get some. But right now, I think only last I checked, 52 of them were minted out of a collection of 100. 0.1 ETH entry. Great collector, very well known as a collector, and he always teases these pictures of his photography equipment. So apparently he has a really great eye for this stuff, and I just really like it. It's subtle. It's not as in your face as some of the other post photography stuff, and just the composition on all of it looks really good. I'm excited to collect. I'm probably gonna pick up 3 to 5 of these myself.
Awesome, great find. Thanks for sharing it. Limon going a little under the radar on this one, so that's cool. But can't hide your great art from us, Limon. Some more great art, great prices. A Zancan below our threshold. Floor is 500. This is charcoal seeds. This is his Fxhash params one. There's some pretty nice ones below our $500 threshold here. Don't know if there's any tickets. Probably. Well, you can claim some, but they're a little bit higher. Anyways, thought I had to highlight a Zancan that hit the threshold here.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this moment on this collection to retrace a little bit. I'm curious what the collection offer is, but it's definitely entering into my pickup range. This is really good. It was a great call. The next is Constellations, a little bit smaller, from Yazid. I've been on a Yazid kick lately, but this is a 50-piece collection that I've just been enamored with. There's no metadata, and if you dig into it, there's some nuances to it, but with a 275 test floor for 50 pieces by Yazid, I mean, just an absolute banger, in my opinion. Wanted to highlight it because, again, he gets a lot of notice for some of his more larger collections, and it was just, this one just seemed like such a historically great price for entry here. In full disclosure, I'm looking at buying a couple myself, so trying to bring it to the community in addition to my own wants and desires.
Awesome one. And then some upcoming drops. I actually haven't been following this one, so you're gonna have to take it on the Tyvek trilogy.
Yeah, no, the part that's up on screen, and I'm sure we'll link it in the notes, is a full dissertation on the thought process behind this, and it's ridiculously long. I have read through it because I feel connected to the project, but and more, I'm actually really connected to like the anonymity of Tyvek, and I've been starting to study his their linguistics and try to tease out who it might be. I got some theories that I'm not willing to publicly state, but yeah. So what's really interesting is the trilogy. If you owned one of his previous pieces, you could mint one of the first, and then there was an open period that gave you entitlement to mint the second piece, and then owning the second piece, not even owning the first, allowed you to mint the third. The reason why I bring it up is the third's a params, so you'll be able to go in and actually influence the output yourself rather than a randomized mint. And I just find it really intriguing. I love the art. I love the concept behind it. You get to choose your own palette. You get to choose your own, I'll call it congestion. There's about 4 or 5 or 6 levers that you can pull. Overall, I don't know what the tickets will go for, but if you have it, mint it. I'm going to be playing around with it, and I'm really looking forward to some of these outputs when an algorithm is allowed to kind of be given to the public and dictate what has a resonance with you.
Yeah, very nice. I totally slept on them. I have a few artifices, but didn't jump on the start of this. And I thought they'd been revealed actually. I didn't realize that they hadn't yet. Because there are theories flying around about who Tyvek is, but
Nothing confirmed.
you think it's Tyler Hobbs?
No, I
Could
don't.
be.
I
Could
hope
be.
so. I hope my dogs hope so.
Yeah, that would be something. The next one here is coming up in when is it? Sorry, July 13th. This is by Asaph Slook called Backwards. It's an Art Blocks Presents coming up 300 pieces, 2 Ether, starting Dutch auction down to zero point 0.1. And Asaph is well, okay, this is gonna take too long, but this art is actually pretty great. The animation is cool. And I think it's going to be quite affordable. You know, that's one nice thing about what's happening these days, Gerrard, is we're getting to really affordable mint prices, which is nice, which is
It's
very nice.
awesome. I'm like really relieved. I mean, again, my jaws dropped on some of the floors that resting floors that got hit. So, but it's awesome. I love it as a collector.
100%. Let's talk about some of our favorite artists. I wanted to highlight Rope Ranisto. Uh, a bunch of reasons to highlight him. We talked about life in West America that has been doing really well in the bear market. Flamingo died about some. Also, post photography AI seems to be holding up really, really well. I mean, we don't have a lot of liquidity, so a sign to look for in a lot of collections is like, is the floor going down? And in addition to post photography still being very popular, albeit with a low supply, Rope is continued to be credited with essentially creating the genre. So I think it's just a name we want to keep putting out there because you should know about him. You should know about life in West America and Reworld, his collections. And he's got some crazy stuff he's been messing around with on Twitter. I don't know if you've seen any of those, Gerrard. A lot of these like videos.
Yeah, the video portion of it, I saw the one that's up on screen right now. It's interesting to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. And then the next artist I want to talk about is Ruddock Sane. Ruddock Sane, you know, he has a really crossed all of the chains, maybe more than any other artist. He has the first Bitcoin ordinals generative art collection. There's only 10 of them called Ordinal Chains. He has this amazing collection called Hypnagogic on Ethereum, and he has many great collections on Fxhash. So really talented artist, and I think you know, it's definitely one to have on your radar, especially if ordinals continue to do well. I think that is going to go down as literally the first collection on ordinals. And some of this art is just so good.
Yeah, super interesting play there long term, honestly. I mean, you're seeing ordinals pick up a lot of steam. So, I mean, if you got the liquidity, man, it could be a really, really asymmetric play, not financial advice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then last one, I wanted to highlight Reworld, Gerrard. Maybe you could give us your thoughts on this collection.
I'm a huge believer in this. I just think that yes, the life in West America is a first. I hate to make the analogy, but I kind of look at that as like the Fidenza, and then this is maybe another release, whether it's ICs or incomplete controls or an edition. Like these are obviously not editions, but I love Reworld. I think that if you want exposure specifically to Rope, it's a really good entry point. I think you've seen a lot of weaths around one getting hit, and then there's some really beautiful pieces if you're willing to pay up on it. I think that Life in West America is a little bit more dynamic and cohesive as a collection, but this is Rope like really digging into it and doing some really different stuff. And if you believe in him as an artist and you believe in this as a genre, I personally am really looking at investigating this and the a potential play around it. My play here is honestly get a aesthetically pleasing piece at a floor to floor plus. I just think there's a really, really cool entry point here.
Yeah, a lot of really nice ones got bought up, and this best offer here has been creeping up. So these people probably took notice of Life in West America selling. Grope is the artist in this space, and so we'll see how they go. And there's some really cool ones, man. I don't know if you've seen this one. This is really cool. I like this one a lot. A little bit creepy, but you know, that's how the genre goes. Anyways, that's it today for today. Excuse me, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Check us out on Twitter. Please give us a like and a follow. It really helps us. And stay tuned for more from Gerrard on 8nap Art. I'm excited to hear more as well.
Yeah, I'll be leaking stuff out. I appreciate anybody who has interest and wants to participate in this journey. I'm super, super excited. So thank you for giving me the platform to at least share this, P. Really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you for tuning into Collector's Corner. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you like this episode and want to help us out, please subscribe and leave us a review on your podcasting platform of choice, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and follow us on YouTube. Please also follow us on Twitter for announcements as we expand to other social and content platforms. Our Twitter handle is @collectors_XYZ. We'd also love to hear any feedback you have, so please comment or reach out. We're always striving to be more useful and get better so we can help you in your collecting journey. The Collector's Corner team and their guests are not registered investment advisors. All views expressed on this podcast are personal opinions and are not specific inducements to make particular investments or investment strategies and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. This show is solely for informational and entertainment purposes only. Before making any financial decisions, please consult a professional.